Have you ever felt that life pushes you into a corner where you must face your greatest fear? This is the story of one ordinary woman whose life changed in a single, unexpected moment. The early morning fog wrapped the streets of San Francisco like a quiet whisper as Julia Hayes hurried toward Westwood Music Academy. Clad in a simple gray cardigan and modest dress, she moved among a crowd of students, adorned in the latest fashions and carrying instrument cases embossed with prestigious logos. Unlike them, Julia clutched a well-worn leather notebook filled with her own musical ideas. At 33, she had spent years writing parts and arrangements for local orchestras and small shows. No one recognized her face, and that was how she preferred it. Her work spoke quietly in the background while she remained unseen. As she made her way through animated groups of violinists, chatting about a special masterclass event with a renowned critic named Constance Wellington, Julia listened in. One student muttered about how a celebrated performance at Carnegie had been labeled technically perfect but soulless. Rumors said that Constance did not just assess music. She used her harsh opinions to cut careers down with a few words. Julia's heart pounded as those hushed voices filled the air. She recalled reading that very harsh review and felt the chill of being judged even before stepping through the doors. Inside the academy's lobby, Julia approached the reception desk with quiet determination. "I'm here for the Composition and Performance Connection seminar," she said softly. The receptionist barely glanced upward before asking, "Are you a student or faculty?" With a gentle shake of her head, Julia explained, "I'm a composer." After a moment of silent evaluation, the receptionist handed her a visitor badge with a look that spoke of skepticism. Signing in with trembling handwriting, Julia wondered why her publisher had insisted she attend. He had bluntly said, "Your work is nice, Julia, but you need to understand how performers live their music by practicing with an instrument." Few knew that she had once held that instrument for 15 long years. After a disastrous audition at a famed school, fear had driven her away from performing, so she retreated into writing music for others. Then, as she rode the elevator, she heard it. A crisp, clear sound of a violin tuning, a note that awakened long-buried memories. Despite years of leaving her old life behind, her muscles remembered the call of music. She took a deep breath, the sound stirring hope and a hint of mischief. When the elevator doors opened, Julia stepped into a hallway that led to the seminar room. Her mind repeated silent notes, urging her to simply observe, to keep herself in the background. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. The room in question was not just any classroom. It was Westwood's own mini concert hall. Tiered seating faced a modest stage, and nearly 60 students filled the front rows, most cradling violins as they prepared for the day's events. Well-known faces from the San Francisco music community mingled with the students, and even the concertmaster and a dean were present, lending a heavy air of expectation. At exactly 10 a.m., the room fell into a hush as Constance Wellington made her entrance. With deliberate grace and silver hair perfectly styled, she stepped into the space with a calm yet commanding presence. Wearing a patterned jacket with matching slacks and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, she began with a crisp, clear good morning. The tone in her voice left no room for doubt. She expected nothing less than excellence today. The critic continued, explaining in no uncertain terms that she offered no soft treatment for those who lacked the spirit and dedication to truly perform. "The music world is not kind, and neither shall I be," she declared. As Julia sat quietly in an empty seat at the back, her eyes fell on the list of names Constance recited. A few students who had already taken the stage had received harsh critiques, each comment cutting like a knife. Julia's notebook trembled slightly on her lap. She was meant to observe, but the eyes of the critic soon wandered toward the back row. Before she knew it, Constance's cold voice echoed, "You there, in the gray cardigan, come forward." Every head in the room turned toward her. The once muted audience now focused all attention on the quiet composer. Caught in a swirl of fear and disbelief, Julia's cheeks warmed as she slowly rose and approached the stage. The critic's question, "What is your name?" came with such an edge that it sent shivers down her spine. In a voice barely above a whisper, she answered, "Julia Hayes." Next came the question about her role. "I compose music," she said, her tone low and hesitant. Constance's expression shifted only minutely as she addressed the room in clear, challenging words. "How do you write for performers when you no longer play an instrument?" A murmur of disbelief and even amusement rippled through the crowd. Then, with a gesture that left no room for further doubt, Constance opened a violin case from a nearby table and held it out. "Show us something, any piece that speaks to you. Even a simple scale is enough," she said with a hint of derision. A snicker from a student at the front row confirmed that the atmosphere was charged with mockery. Julia hesitated, feeling her heart pound. This was not the supportive moment she had expected. It was a test meant to humiliate her, a test to prove that she was an imposter among these talented performers. In that moment, memories flooded back. Julia saw herself as a young woman, fingers aching from hours of practice, standing at the edge of her own dreams before fear silenced her on stage. The violin, resting gently in her hands, felt both familiar and heavy with the past. She could easily choose the safe option, a simple scale, a mere formality, and retreat into her quiet world of compositions. Yet deep inside, something stirred. The memory of when music used to fill her with hope, when every note was a small act of rebellion against her own doubts, urged her forward. Standing on that modest stage, with every eye fixed on her, the weight of the world pressed in. The critic's eyes shone with the promise of further ridicule, and the students exchanged knowing glances. But as Julia took her first breath on stage, she made a decision that would change everything. Rather than offering the safe expected notes, she chose to play from the depths of her memory, to let her heart speak through the strings. With the violin carefully cradled beneath her chin, she lifted the bow with steady hands and drew it slowly across the strings. The opening note rang out clear and true, a sound that filled the hall with a warmth that defied the chill of early morning fog. For a long moment, the room held its breath. The critic's face shifted ever so slightly as the sound from the violin softened the sharp edge of her earlier words. And in that fragile silence, the first notes of a piece began to unfold. A piece that Julia had once known by heart. A piece that told the story of her own secret battles and quiet determination. The notes were not simple. They carried more than mere technical skill. They were the voice of a woman who had long hidden her true self, now determined to reveal every part of her soul. With each drawn note, the music grew, and the room seemed to transform as if touched by a gentle power that spoke of hope, loss, and a yearning to be remembered. As the sound soared, every listener found themselves caught in the spell of the music. Even those who had mocked her now found themselves quiet and still, their earlier chuckles disappearing into the hum of a new understanding. And so, with the stage set and the first vulnerable note already spoken, Julia Hayes stepped into a moment of truth that could not be ignored. The silence that followed Julia's first note held the promise of a turning point. Gradually her music grew in strength and feeling. weaving a tale that bridged the gap between past hurt and a future yet uncharted. The notes flowed gently at first, speaking of hidden sorrow and the burden of self-doubt. They carried the weight of years spent in the background, when her music was only a secret companion and never meant for public eyes. Yet as the song continued, something in her playing began to shift. The notes that started softly soon rose in volume and spirit, as if encouraging all who listened to let go of their own fears. On the stage, the transformation was remarkable. Each movement of her hand brought forth a sound that was both sure and tender. The way her bow skimmed over the strings spoke of long nights spent in practice, and even though her past was marred by one disastrous moment at a grand stage, tonight that memory was used as a stepping stone rather than a chain. With every measured stroke, Julia reached out to the audience, telling them a wordless story of struggle and return. The lines between technical skill and heartfelt emotion blurred as the music poured out in clear, honest tones. In the audience, expressions began to change. Where once there had been low murmurs and skeptical glances, now faces shone with a warmth of recognition. A few students who had earlier snickered at the thought of a simple scale sat in stunned silence. Teachers leaned forward, their eyes glistening as they absorbed every subtle phrase that Julia coaxed from her instrument. Even the seasoned musician in the back, known for his reserved manner, could not hide his growing admiration. In that charged moment, everyone present realized that they were witnessing not just notes played in a sequence, but a heartfelt story being told through music. The critic, Constance Wellington, who had arrived with an air of harsh expectation, found herself caught off guard. Known for sharp and unforgiving words, she now sat with eyes that betrayed a struggle to hold back something unfamiliar: respect. As the melody moved from soft and reflective to a more confident and warm tone, her steely mask showed its first cracks. Julia's music was not merely a display of technical skill, it was an outpouring of inner truth. With every rising phrase, she reached a new level of self-assertion that resonated deep in the hearts of those who listened. As the performance continued, the sound from the violin filled the small concert hall with a sense of unity and understanding. The once tense atmosphere gave way to a calm that spoke of healing. Listeners found themselves leaning in, caught up in the emotion of each measure. In one particularly moving passage, the music shifted gently from a minor tone to a brighter sound. It was as if the melody itself was saying goodbye to past sorrows and welcoming a hopeful future. There was a simple clarity in the way her notes combined, a clarity that needed no fancy embellishments to move its audience. The hall became a place where everyone felt the weight and lightness of music at the same time. The very air vibrated with the clear, steady sound of the violin, and even the critic's earlier harsh gaze softened into one of quiet wonder. Julia's eyes, steady and focused, told the silent story of a woman reclaiming her power, not by meeting the low expectations of others, but by daring to be true to herself. There was a calm dignity in how she let each note speak for itself, a dignity that slowly silenced the whispers of doubt among the students and faculty alike. With each measured note, Julia reminded every listener that music could be a way to overcome fear. In that charged space, the long-held regret of not performing was replaced with a gentle assurance that she was not defined by her past. The once unassailable critic now listened with a mixed expression, her face a quiet canvas that told of grudging admiration. Across the room, soft murmurs of approval replaced earlier scoffs. One can almost feel the invisible thread that connected every heart in that room, bound by the simple truth that even the quietest souls have a voice worth hearing. As the performance neared its end, the notes became even more steady and clear. The emotions in the music grew richer with each passing moment, building toward a final, unforgettable passage. Julia's body moved in a way that spoke of ease and control. Gone was the trembling uncertainty of the past. Instead, the music flowed as naturally as a stream, finding its way through gentle hills. The message was clear. It was not a simple scale she played, but her truth. Every note was a gentle declaration that the fear which once held her captive was now gone, replaced by a warm resolve that came from within. And then, in a moment that seemed to stretch time itself, the final chord was played. The sound hung in the air, a soft, lingering echo that made it hard to believe that the performance was over. For 3 long heartbeats, the hall was wrapped in deep silence. Then one person in the back clapped, a single sincere clap that quickly inspired others. Soon the silence broke into a steady, joyful applause that filled every corner of the hall. Julia slowly lowered her violin and exhaled a long-held breath. As the clapping grew louder, the critic, Constance Wellington, leaned forward, her earlier stern look replaced by a face that now held a touch of admiration. In that moment, the harsh lesson intended to embarrass Julia had turned into a celebration of hidden strength. The room was alive with appreciation as teachers, students, and even seasoned musicians approached her with words of praise. A professor in the audience remarked softly that he had rarely felt such sincerity in a performance, and soon people began discussing ideas for new projects and opportunities with her. After the applause, Constance gently came forward and quietly said, "You have shown us how one can reveal the truth with an instrument. I have not seen this honesty in a long time." Her tone was warm, hard edges softened by the power of the moment. In a brief and sincere conversation, Julia admitted that she had once studied at a respected institute, but had stopped performing after a painful audition experience. Constance, listening with unexpected empathy, suggested that sometimes challenges come in disguise, urging Julia to allow her talent to shine even in difficult times. A few moments later, the day took on a new light. Faculty members and local musicians gathered around Julia, offering ideas for future projects and even handing her a card from the city's chamber orchestra. That simple gesture hinted at many doors opening ahead. Walking out of the academy later that day, Julia felt as though a heavy burden had been lifted. The quiet journey she had taken in that little concert hall was only the start of something new, a chance to step forward and share the beauty locked away inside her heart with the world. Before we sign off, if you found this story of courage and unexpected triumph touching, please hit the subscribe button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share your own moments of overcoming fear. Your voice matters, and stories like Julia's remind us all that sometimes the strongest heart is found in the quietest moments. Thank you for watching. Keep your mind open and your spirit brave. Until next time.